This is RTV6 News at 5:30, working for you.
Now at 5:30, tough decision. The owners of a small Indiana family restaurant say they just can't survive the economic toll caused by the pandemic. We will share their story. And one of Indiana's classic fall football matchups won't happen this year. The football tradition interrupted by coronavirus.
All right, here's what we're talking about today in our lineup. What is the school year going to look like? We're going to show you some of the alternatives parents are turning to, one of them called micro-schooling. Also this.
I hope that we're able to look back at these few years as a revolution in history. This really could be the place where that happened.
As many cities are taking steps towards police reform, what one group says a police-free future could look like. And there is new hope in the search for a better treatment for Alzheimer's disease. The new drug the FDA is considering, even though researchers stopped the trial on it.
It's been tough for businesses of all kinds to try and survive the coronavirus pandemic. Nearly every small business in Indiana had to shut its doors temporarily because of the mandates put in place at the beginning. But even though restrictions have eased, for some it's just not enough. RTV6's Kelsey Anderson shares the story of a Greenfield business that's had to make a heartbreaking decision.
Blood, sweat, tears, and knickknacks have filled this family-owned restaurant for the last 8 years. But now, because of the impact of the coronavirus, they're having to close their doors.
Reading all of the social media stuff, my dad said that it was like reading his own obituary.
Earlier this week, Jeffrey Clifford announced on Facebook Florida Cracker Barbecue would be closing its doors permanently in August.
To see this close is not what any of us wanted. I feel like we've done everything we can to stay open. We've gone from 15 or so employees down to about 4, and I've been working, 80 hours a week just to try to keep us alive.
Clifford has been running the restaurant his dad opened nearly 8 years ago, and he says it's hard to see it go.
I mean, my daughter was the first customer back before I thought I would come back into the business at all. The hog on the wall I killed when I was 9. My dad's first restaurant pictures are over there. I've got pictures of my grandparents on the wall that have deceased, my brother's on the wall. And so it's tough to see it go, but at the same time we know that it's the right timing for it.
He tells me the impact of the governor's mandated shutdown plus the restrictions on gatherings have been severe, especially for this small town business that relies on big catering orders.
Our daily business is fine. Throughout COVID, we've actually maintained our daily level of sales except for those first couple of weeks. It's just, you lose a third of the business segment, and it's, we're margin, our profit margins are in the pennies, and we've lost quarters.
They plan to be open until the end of August, and they want to thank anyone who's been in here in the last 8 years. In Greenfield, Kelsey Anderson, RTV6.
And the pandemic has also cost downtown Indianapolis another major event. Music for All says it will cancel all of its fall Bands of America marching band competitions across the country. That includes Bands of America Super Regionals and the Bands of America Grand National Championships held every year at Lucas Oil Stadium. Bands of America Grand Nationals typically brings in more than 100 high school bands from across the country and around 80,000 people to the downtown area. Kyle.
Well, we had some blue sky pop out this afternoon, and that has helped to fuel a few showers and isolated thunderstorms out across central Indiana. But things are fairly quiet for most of us. As we look at Storm Team 6 radar, you can see where we've got this pencil-thin line area with a few lightning strikes there southeast of Crawfordsville. That's stretching through Boone County, just north of Noblesville and around Alexandria. As we track that off toward the east, you can see moving into Muncie here about 10 till 6, Fishers at 5:56, and eastward from there. Then just very isolated downpours just to the east of west of Seymour. As we look at the storm threat, though, some good news. They've taken that marginal risk and pretty much pushed it out of the RTV6 area down along the Ohio River. Not to say we can't have an isolated strong storm with some gusty winds. Seeing some of that blue sky, it is hot and muggy, though, with 85 degrees and that 72-degree dew point. Put those two things together, and it feels like we are in the 90s, even though we have temperatures in the 80s. It feels like 91 downtown, feels like 92 in Lafayette, and 88 in Columbus right now. Those temperatures will stay toasty, along with the humidity and some isolated thunderstorms. We'll talk about when that humidity will break in just a few minutes, Chris.
The news feed starts with the U.S. government making a deal to put some big money into a potential COVID vaccine. It plans to pay Pfizer and a German company nearly $2 billion to produce 100 million doses if their vaccine's approved. The government says the vaccine would be offered for free. The head of the CDC stressing again today that people need to wear masks. While Robert Redfield says that the mask is our most powerful tool, he does not think a mask mandate would work. Dr. Anthony Fauci warning today it is unlikely that COVID-19 will ever be eradicated. But he does say with a good combination of public health measures and some global herd immunity, as well as a good vaccine, we can get this virus under control. FEMA says it's possible we see another shortage of personal protective equipment as cases of COVID rise. The threat of a shortage was called a national security issue during a congressional hearing. The U.S. relies on overseas suppliers. Now, they said the federal government is competing with state and counties on getting these supplies as well. Now, the pandemic is leading a disturbing trend on our roads. For the third straight month, more people are dying on the roads than they should be.
And we've had an 8% decline in the number of deaths, but as I just said before, we have a 23% increase in the number of fatalities per mile driven. And you'd want those two numbers to be the same. If we're driving less, we should have less deaths.
Now, data from May shows an increase of nearly 24% of people dying on the roads compared to how many miles people are driving. Now, that's after an even larger increase in April, and all of this started way back in March.
People, I guess, think that it's an open roadway, so now it's a speedway.
Now, the head of the National Safety Council just spoke with leading traffic agencies about the trends. The government does plan to launch a public awareness campaign soon.
And I will tell you right now, a lot of us are all very distracted. We have our heads elsewhere. So just make sure that when you get behind the wheel, you drive and you try to put aside all of the other issues that might be, swirling around for you.
Now, speeding is often a leading cause of death on the road. Traffic safety advocates say you also need to be aware that more pedestrians and bicyclists are on the roads now as well. Let's get back to our lineup. Micro schooling. That is getting new attention as parents are weighing their options for school in the fall.
Kind of a throwback to the old days where you'd have one room, multiple children, but in this sense, those children have been together, quarantined together.
We're looking at how this idea could work for families.
No fall sports this year at Wabash College. Today, the school in Crawfordsville announced that its fall sports teams, including football, will not play. This comes after their conference, the North Coast Athletic Conference, suspended athletic competition through the end of December. That means no Monon Bell game this year. The Small College Football Classic featuring Wabash and DePauw has been played 126 times dating back to the late 1800s. We just learned DePauw has also called off playing fall sports as well. Chris.
Parents are considering different options when it comes to school as they manage the pressure of the pandemic, and one is called microschooling. It's basically a small school. It could have regular classroom space or operate out of someone's home using remote curriculum.
Usually there's a theme attached to it or a certain population they're serving, or they're trying to accomplish something that perhaps isn't getting accomplished in larger schools.
Dr. Maureen O'Shaughnessy started the Micro School Coalition, and she hopes that micro schools can help ease dropout rates, making sure that no kid falls through the cracks. Now, she says that they also allow teachers to build relationships with each student and focus on their passions.
We all thrive when we're seen, heard, and valued, and that can't always happen if a teacher has 149 other kids to teach that day.
O'Shaughnessy says that parents in the Seattle area have turned to social media with questions about logistics and inclusion, and that is also true for a mom in Boston. She created a Facebook group for parents and educators who are interested in microschooling.
We want to utilize the curriculum that our school system is working very hard to create. We are not by any means saying that that is not good enough for us. We wish in a perfect world that we could send our kids back to school and learn what the teachers have to learn. But for various reasons, we are uncomfortable doing that.
The Micro School Coalition offers free information sessions and podcasts. If you want to learn more, O'Shaughnessy hopes the conversation on microschooling will increase scrutiny of our current system, which she calls outdated. All right, let's check back in on the lineup and a promising development in a possible new treatment to improve brain function for Alzheimer's disease.
And it's the first time in my career, these doctors said, first time in our career that we've ever seen it.
why the FDA is considering this new drug, even though researchers stopped the trial on it. For the first time in more than a decade, a new treatment to improve brain function for Alzheimer's disease has been submitted to the FDA for review. Now, this was after the drug trial was stopped. Then a second look revealed some promising results. Maya Rodriguez shares a family story that says the drug worked for them.
Gina and Steve Waterhouse are a team in all areas of life, a 43-year marriage, and running several businesses together.
I didn't notice anything, but our employees did.
But in 2016, things changed.
I wasn't remembering to do some of the stuff I was supposed to be doing.
Gina found out she had early Alzheimer's.
They said, well, you can come back in a year and we'll check and see how you're doing, or we have a drug trial if you're interested.
Gina and Steve spent the next 2.5 years at the Mayo Clinic, where Gina eventually got high doses of the drug aducanumab.
I decided I don't have anything to lose.
Steve noticed changes, like Gina remembering on a ride how to get somewhere.
And he just smiled and he said, well, let me tell you what we're seeing. We're seeing cognitive improvement. And it's the first time in my career, these doctors said, first time in our career that we've ever seen it.
Then, last year, the drug trial suddenly ended.
But I can tell you that since I've stopped it, I feel like I'm going downhill a little.
The trial was stopped early based on a futility analysis that was a statistical analysis that was done by the Biogen team, predicting that the trial would not actually be successful.
Rebecca Edelmeyer is in charge of ensuring the public and all chapters of the Alzheimer's Association know about critical research advancements. She says a second look at the trial data revealed those on the highest dose of the drug were seeing improvement in their brain function.
It's at a very important moment for the Alzheimer's research community.
While the government tries to determine whether or not the drug is safe and effective enough to use, Gina is no longer able to take it. She and Steve are now making new decisions together, like retirement.
We just decided our tomorrows have to come today, and we're having a great time. We are loving life.
I'm Maya Rodriguez reporting.
All that humidity that's in the air, and we are bringing that out in a few isolated downpours across central Indiana, but only if you see that rain. It's going to be very limited in its coverage. As we check out Storm Team 6 radar, we've got that one band. It's lost the lightning in it right now, but stretches from across I-74 and then northeast from there, nearing Noblesville. Looks like you'll get a little bit of rain out of this, not too much. A little heavier pocket of some rain moving into the Anderson area over the next half hour. Here's a look at Truecast, and again, the coverage stays very isolated this evening, but it will carry over into tonight. Those rain chances not completely going away here through the overnight and into our Friday morning. We start off our Friday with cloud cover, or our Thursday rather, with cloud cover and temperatures that will make their way into the middle 80s for that afternoon high. It will be just a little less humid, but I want to put that in perspective. Our dew point, it's in the stifling category, and that's where it's been the last couple of days. Tomorrow it comes down a little bit, but it's still going to feel very muggy out there. Overall, though, not a bad day if you do want to pace yourself and head out there for the bike ride or a walk. We've got temperatures that will top out at 82 in Kokomo, 85 in the Greenwood area. And I think the best chance for some rain as we go into tomorrow afternoon is going to be in the southeastern portion of the state and over into Ohio. Checking out the 7-day planning forecast now, and those temperatures are going to heat up again for the weekend. It looks like we'll be primarily dry, though, as temperatures approach 90 degrees on Sunday. And then next week, Monday and Tuesday, that looks to be our better chance at some more widespread rainfall, and that will also knock those temperatures back, getting pretty comfortable by Wednesday, a high of 82. Chris?
While some police departments change their approach, certain groups are crafting plans for a policeless society. Alexa Liaco spoke to one about its vision for the future.
We didn't think this moment would be here this soon.
A moment of anguish, anger, and opportunity.
Aiming to change the narrative around policing from one that's more reform-minded to one that's abolition-minded.
Peter Van Kennett has spent the last several years working on a 150-year performance review of the Minneapolis Police Department with nonprofit MPD 150.
There's never been a point in the police department where there hasn't been a large amounts of race and class-based violence.
Their findings document the department's influence on the community and its lack of oversight. Since 1963, 5 separate committees were formed to monitor ethics within the department, only to be dissolved.
These committees are designed in such a way that they don't actually have real power or real teeth. They can only make recommendations.
Seeing the past and living through today's unrest, MPD 150 began planning for a police-free future.
Not that everybody here is in favor of it, but now everybody here has to talk about it.
That conversation launched into the mainstream by the death of George Floyd at the hands of Minneapolis police officers. And as the Minneapolis Police Department 3rd Precinct was set on fire by community members calling for change, the Minneapolis City Council listened, pledging to dismantle the department. But can we really live in a world without officers on the streets? MPD 150 says there are ways of making that happen.
It's about looking at underlying causes, putting money into employment, putting money into drug treatment, putting all these things are core principles of abolition.
It also means diverting 911 calls to the right responder.
We're not trying to make it so that there's nobody to call. We're trying to figure out who you can actually call.
But the Minneapolis police chief says he's not leaving without a fight for reform first, even with the issues the department has faced.
I did not abandon this department then, and I will not abandon this department now.
A police-free city may take years, but Van Kennett believes it will come.
I hope that we're able to look back at these few years as a revolution in history. This really could be the place where that happened.
I'm Alexa Liacco.
Alexa, thank you. Now, more cities are talking about reparations for Black Americans. Providence, Rhode Island is looking into a reparations program. California's Assembly passing a bill to create a task force to look into reparations last month. Now, last week, Asheville, North Carolina City Council approved reparations and apologized for its history of slavery.
One of the things that Asheville has done is saying, okay, we recognize that there are areas like entrepreneurship and home ownership where Black people lag. So we're going to actually put resources in those areas because we know those areas lead to wealth building.
The president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors proposed a resolution to support a reparations bill in Congress that would study proposals. But political science professor Nyambi Carter expects to see more action on the local level because she says local communities have more autonomy to make decisions.
We've had a century to do the right thing by Black people in this country, and we just haven't, in part because there's no political will to do it. And the truth is, when we're looking at the national level, no one gets anything. No one wins elections on an issue like reparations. So I still think it is one of those things that I am cautiously optimistic about.
Chicago provides psychological and psychiatric treatment in its reparations plan, which is one thing Carter says she'd like to see in more places. There are questions about where cities will get the money for these reparations. Asheville hasn't said how it's paying for them. Evanston, Illinois is using a tax revenue from marijuana sales, but critics also question who could be eligible. Let's start the newsfeed. Doctors are trying to figure out what impact COVID antibodies have. New research suggests that antibodies stay in the body for a few months if you have a mild illness. Now, doctors say that doesn't mean your protection is gone, but they do need more data to know for sure. Well, it might feel nice to eat at a restaurant, but the recent spike in cases has come after more people started doing more social activities like going out to eat. This is according to Yelp, which looked at just how many reviews were being done on its platform. United is expanding its policy on masks. You have to wear them on planes, but soon you'll have to wear them in all areas of the airport. That includes United clubs and baggage claim areas. All right, we have a final check of our lineup. Virtual reality is giving doctors new perspective on COVID-19, what they hope to learn from a 360-degree inside look at a patient's lungs. Doctors are using 360-degree virtual reality to better understand what COVID-19 does to our lungs. George Washington University Hospital used a CT scan of a patient's chest in March to make what you're looking at right here. The yellow that you see is the virus's damage to the lung. Researchers now looking at the lungs of 27 other patients.
We started this research study again, an attempt to find out more information about the disease process, and there's some other way that we can help our patients. So what we're now able to do with some additional information is actually measure the amount of infected lung tissue that each of these patients has.
They then compare this to data on the patient's lungs when they first came to the hospital. Now they're looking to see if the amount of damaged lung tissue impacts who recovers from the virus. They hope that these images can be a wake-up call.
One of the main reasons why we tried to put this video out there to the public, so that they can see, for themselves firsthand the actual damage that's being done to the lungs and what that looks like.
Now, he thinks that certain people with pre-existing pulmonary disease or those on ventilators could have long-term lung damage. Now, he doesn't think that's the case for those with milder forms of the virus. Researchers are working to develop a new all-in-one at-home rapid flu and COVID-19 test. It would most likely just need saliva. Researchers hope to have a prototype by winter, and major companies are standing by to scale up production if it's approved. Now, some job seekers are finding that landing a job during this pandemic, it is easier if you know about the job before it's posted. Tomorrow, how an employment expert says you can learn about an opening before everyone else, and it's free.
Getting ready for some rain in portions of Muncie, Carmel, as well as Brownsburg here over the next half hour or so. But if you don't get any rain this evening, those chances pretty minimal here as we go through the next several days and really through the weekend as the 90-degree heat returns on Sunday. Better rain chances next week. Thanks for joining us at 5:30. The news.